I'm going to start with just sharing some of the progression resources that we've created with schools and cluster across the region. Liam is here from Mycomber Primary School. He's going to talk to us about the primary science quality mark. Really excited to have Ellis here from St Andrews Primary School, and they're going to share their engaging experiences through the use of the Froebelian occupations. We'll move on then to the Federation of Eveswell and Somerton, where they're going to look at using design thinking and using the design and technology AOLE, statement of what matters from the AOLE, to lead the science and technology AOLE as a whole. And then we've got a video recording there from Mr. Turner at Blackwood Primary, where he's looking at the progression of using Sphero Indies and how they've used that at Blackwood Primary. And then we'll finish the session this afternoon with just sharing some grants that are open or will be opening shortly, and the professional learning offer for next year. So I'll just start with sharing some of our documents that we've got focusing on progression. We've used the best science evidence. If you Google the best evidence, there's some significant research there around when it's pedagogically appropriate to introduce different concepts and themes. And we have started to pull together some documentation that looks at the progression of these linked into the research and evidence that is available. And then we've also got some progression maps looking at different threads through the AOLE. So we've got here the ecosystem example where it goes from progression step 1 to 5. And these are just great resources to start with when you're looking at progression with your cluster and creating your science and technology vision and pathway for it. So all of these will be available on the Supporting Our Schools website. So I'll share that link with you later on in the session. I'll get the links up and popped in the chat for you so you can access them. But we do have these documents available. I just wanted to share with you how, as a region, we can help. You've got the professional learning for individual schools or at cluster level, and that we can offer to you dependent on what you're looking at. So that can be quite bespoke. But we've also got the opportunity, we've got some capacity at the moment to work with you as a cluster to develop these progressive documents, this progressive curriculum for this AOLE. In addition to Andros and myself, we've also got the partner schools, many of you which are on the call this afternoon sharing some of their work with you, but they are also available to work with you again as at school level or at cluster level to provide some bespoke professional learning. The link to the website is there for the EAS Supporting Our Schools, and the science that's under review at the moment. So we are updating it, and hopefully by the end of term, we'll have all these documents there ready for you to be able to use as you see fit across your school and cluster. Looking nationally, there are, again, a range of resources looking at progression and assessment in the science and technology AOLE, and this can be located on Hub. I've popped the link there for you so you can access it, but there are a few recordings and presentations on there looking at examples from a range of schools across Wales, so going further than just regional, so you can see what other schools are doing to develop progression and assessment in their science and technology AOLE. And to start this afternoon session, I'm going to welcome Liam onto the call, and he's going to talk to you about the primary science quality mark. So Liam, if you'd like to take control. Brilliant, thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Liam Coupland. I'm over at Mycomber Primary, and I'm one of the primary science quality mark hub leads for Wales. I'm going into my first hub in the autumn 2024, and just to talk to you today about, if you haven't heard about PSQM, about what the benefits it has for your school, but also about benefits if you have done PSQM before, some of the different levels that we have. So it's going to be a bit of a change going into 24-25. There's 3 different elements to PSQM. We have the regular primary science quality mark. This is aimed at schools that are just beginning their journey with their science leadership. It might be good for a new science lead or a school where there's been a change in curriculum, especially with the curriculum for Wales, where always I suppose adapting and refining our curriculums as well, and PSQM is a good way to, I suppose, have that focused look on how science looks in your school. The next step up, especially if you've already done PSQM, is PSQM Gilt, and that's more for established schools that have already had that sustained impact on science teaching and learning. this would be the schools that have already well adapted to the new curriculum. They've got their ideas in place that fit their bespoke environment, because obviously we've all got our own curricula tailored to our school environment, to our pupils we have. And this is for schools that have either done PSQM or are already on that journey themselves. Just for when I myself went through PSQM leading it in school, we jumped straight into the Guild because we'd already had that impact already with some of my work with the ASE and the IOP and other learning bodies. So even if you haven't done PSQM before, if you've shown I suppose sustained engagement with a variety of different organisations, you can just move up straight away to PSQM Guild. And for those schools that are even further ahead, that have that regular interaction with other schools, that lead training with other schools, lead in their clusters, you have PSQM Outreach, which is like the top tier of the PSQM. And that's really focusing on your effective teaching and learning in your school, but also how that effective teaching and learning is distributed between the other schools as well. And what do we get from PSQM? Not only does the science subject lead, who attends multiple sessions with myself or one of the other hub leads, they get lots of access to other people who have a lot of knowledge and experience, and we almost try and tailor that experience for the needs of your school or you as the science lead as well. What we're planning at the moment for my hub is it'll be a blended model where you will have 2 days in school, coming over to my school for 2 full-day sessions, which will be around October and April of 2025. And then there'll be 4 after-school sessions throughout the term, starting in September and leading all the way to June. We're going for the after-school approach because we found when I went through PSQM, we did that approach as well, and it minimises the supply costs. Yes, it does put that added burden onto the science lead to have that time after school, but we felt that it worked. For my own experience going through PSQM, it just took some of the expenses out of the way, but also meant I could use that funding for other purposes as well. So it's about getting what works well for your school as well. Now, if you do want to find out any more information about PSQM, there's going to be a regional meeting with Angela Marsh. She's the overall hub lead for Wales and the Southwest. And she's hosting those sessions in 2 sessions in July. Now, if you, I'll drop this in onto the Teams as well. But if you register on the PSQM website, all the information will be sent to you, or you could contact the regional lead herself. The email's on the screen now. Now, if you did want to be part of this program, there is a cost to the program, which is for this year is £950. Unfortunately, this year we don't currently have any bursaries or anything available, but one thing I myself have done is look for other sources of funding and other sponsorship to try and progress through this program. So if you do have any questions or any advice, or want any advice or anything else, feel free to drop me a message either by I'll drop my email into the chat and onto the Teams as well, or feel free to give us a call at My Sycamore and I'll get back to you as soon as possible just with some ideas for funding sources. If your school does have less than 100 pupils, the cost is £625, so it's a bit lower. But unfortunately, there are no bursaries at the moment, but I will drop any messages into the Teams as soon as any opportunities occur. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Liam. I'll just give a minute there to see if anyone's got any questions, but I think Liam is staying with us for the main part of the session. So if there is anything you wanted to ask about the primary science quality mark, please do pop those questions in the chat, and I'm sure Liam will suitable points we can stop and come back to those. we've got Ellis joining us next. So Ellis, if I pass over to you at this point, really looking forward to hearing about these engaging experiences. For those of you on the call that have visited St Andrews, you'd have seen this in action, but it's just a chance for Ellis to share with us what they've done with them in school and the impact it's had at St Andrews. So I'll hand over to you, Ellis.
Thanks, Susan. Hi, everybody. I'm Ellis. As Susan said, I am from St Andrews Primary School. And over the last sort of 2 to 3 years, we've been looking really heavily at Froebel and the Froebelian principles, and also how we can embed the Froebelian occupations, which are very STEM related. And that's why Susan's invited us here today, and how we've sort of adopted them. Particularly in early years, but how we now make that progressive across the school as well. I've got some examples of that today. So we just think that the Froebelian occupations link really, really lovely to the enabling learning document, particularly the engaging experiences. Everything that document is saying about promoting learners' independence, providing them with those challenges, making sure there's that deep level of involvement without us as adults interrupting that play and that experiential learning. We just feel that the Froebel occupations really, really fit hand in hand with that, as well as bringing sort of that authentic learning and keeping that going within our classrooms. So we've sort of adopted the Froebelian principles and occupations to embed those engaging experiences to sit alongside that enabling learning document. So we already had lots of the occupations already happening in St Andrews. We already had block play, we already had woodwork, we already had clay, but it was about how can we develop that with the Froebelian principles, and actually how can we make that quite progressive across the school. So 2 years ago, 8 members of the early years team actually did the introductory module with some Froebel trainers. So they came in for a 2-day course with us, just for us to sort of see those underpinning, those underlying Froebelian principles, and how we can then embed those into our classrooms. And like I have said, that I just feel like those principles and that enabling learning document really do fit hand in hand together to support practitioners and learners to make them understand the meaning of authentic and purposeful learning, particularly with new staff. I think, throwing all those words out is sometimes quite tricky. And I just feel like the Froebel occupations really reflect what the enabling learning document is saying. I have got some of my favourite Froebel quotes just thrown in here as well. And I do think it's right what he says. So to learn a thing in life and through doing is much more developing, cultivating and strengthening than to learn it merely through the verbal communication of ideas. It is about those hands-on experiences and giving those children that ability to learn without capping it. And I feel like that's what the Froebelian occupations are really, really doing for our learners. So we have sort of embedded, some more than others, some of the 5 main sort of occupations as engaging experiences, particularly in the early years and across progression step 2. But I have got some examples of how this looks in progression step 3 as well today. So we've got sewing, woodwork, cooking, clay and block play, and that all looks very different depending on sort of what year group you're in and what progression step that's in as well. And we just feel that those 5 occupations really enable the children to be creative, to communicate and collaborate together. So important that they're developing those physical skills as well as those fine motor skills. There's problem solving, the open-endedness of it, and actually just developing an understanding of the natural world around them, and relating, like the 4 purposes say, to the real life and practical world of when they are older. And that's what we are sort of supporting them in doing. So I've got some reasons of why we've sort of incorporated the occupations, and then some examples then of how we've developed that across the progression steps. So in terms of block play, we know it's so rich. It just offers a wealth of opportunities for learners to express and to show their understanding of the world around them. Working together, or particularly in the early years, we do see children working parallel at this stage in block play. And again, that's absolutely fine. And then really embedding and applying those cross-curricular skills, so your literacy, numeracy and your ICT skills through block play is just really paramount. We make sure that we have the stages of block play displayed in all block play areas. We don't sort of say we're only seeing stages 1 and 2 in nursery and stages 3 and 4 in reception. It's not that way. It's every child sort of on their own journey of block play. We've got some real, I really think some of our reception children this year are going to be engineers when they're older. What we're seeing, maybe some of their block play skills are that stage 7, and actually they might be showing stage 7 where some of our year 2 learners may not be at that stage. So it's about really thinking about each child's on their own independent sort of journey within block play as well. So in early years this year, we've really driven and used block play to support our observations that we're doing on our learners. This is sort of our main way of assessing our youngest learners now in our school, is through that really rich and purposeful observations, which we're finding are just giving us so much. These are all pictures and photos from myself and Lucy's classroom. And we were finding at the beginning of the year, it was our typical boys going into the block play and they were really driving it. But the more and more that we've sort of engaged in there's so many other learners now who are going in there, and we're finding out so many things from them, and just that is our assessment of them through that. And Frobel really does support the use of observations. He says the most successful interactions are those that comment on the structures and extend children's thinking, rather than asking those closed questions when you already know the answer. So if you already know it's a castle, don't ask, oh, what have you made? Let's go wider with that, with our more open-ended questions. So we've done a lot of work on the role of the adult within the block play, particularly in early years this year. We've got children, these are all our reception HQs. They've gone absolutely wild for superheroes and HQs in Lucy and I's classroom this year. But that doesn't then mean that we've done a whole reception project on superheroes, because it was only a cluster, tiny group of our learners out of 90 children. Maybe only 5 had an interest in this. So it was about Lucy and I supporting their interest in the block play and supporting developing their HQs, their designs, or, you know, bringing in junk modelling and things with it, without having the whole class having to do superheroes. This was just something that was sort of running alongside our sort of day-to-day normal teaching and learning within the classroom. And then we've got observation books then in the early years that we use as our evidence for observations, and you'll find that most of our observations this year, which is lovely to see, is coming from the block play. So it just shows how much the children can sort of gauge from it and what they can get from it, but also what we as adults can gain from block play being so rich and purposeful within our environments. And then, you know, the older we get, the more sort of it naturally develops into those more STEM block play projects. But again, incorporating this into your planning. So the picture on the left hand side was year 3 when they were doing bridges. So of course children are naturally going to go and represent bridges within the block play and use that within their STEM projects. But also on the right hand side are some year 2 learners, and this is sort of that uninterrupted play, that teachable moment where Miss Evans could just overhear them saying, oh, if I put my fingers like this now, if we could make a shadow, I could do X, Y, Z. So it was about Miss Evans providing those children immediately with some torches, as simple as that, and talking and having that dialogue and that scientific language about shadows and light and everything else, which then may have fed into a project further on. So it's about those 2 examples there are sort of planned projects and in the moment STEM projects as well, and going with learners' interests and responding to them. And then that lovely picture photo in the middle then is where we extend our block play into year 5 and 6 with the smaller scale blocks of Kaplan blocks, which we're finding within a communal area. Again, that's just sort of a free flow thing that children can do, or it can also enhance a project. And then we've moved on to woodwork then. So sort of why woodwork and why we think that is so important. It's probably one of the richest Frobel occupations. We get and gain so much from our learners and from having that occupation from nursery to year 6. So we were originally inspired by Pete Morehouse about 9 years ago now on this. Our nursery staff were trained on it first, and then as the children developed throughout the school and they were trained, so were the staff. So we've now got nursery to year 6 all sorts of accessing woodwork, again, this is seen in a different way across progression steps and across year groups, and I can show you sort of how it's used. It does form part of our sort of natural outdoor play within the early years, and then how this becomes more of a planned STEM opportunity and experience as the children sort of develop within their woodwork skills. But again, we see so much empowerment and children's achievements within the woodwork. Some children that you think are not engaged a lot in the classroom, you put them in woodwork and they're engaged for hours. There is sort of stepping stones. Children, you do have to teach them to use each tool, but we've got reception children now who were trained within nursery, and they're using it all completely independently, obviously with that adult sort of overseeing it. But yeah, we do have this from nursery to year 6. So particularly in the early years, like I said earlier, it's really important about having that enabling adult sort of being there to make the woodwork progressive, but without leading it for the children is really important. So you wouldn't take all 30 children into the woodworking reception and expect them all to be making a birdhouse. It's not about that in the early years. I've listed some things there of what I'd expect to see my enabling adults doing in early years. So they are going to be doing the physical setting up of the woodwork area, making sure those resources are there, and they are going to be instructing and teaching the children how to use those tools safely, making sure that the provision is appropriate for the learners. Have they got loose parts available for them? Have they got counting cues where they can measure, and so on? That continuous monitoring of the safety aspect of it, being there available, so being that available adult to support, but without intervening. And then really in the early years, we're focusing on the process rather than the product. And it links really nicely with my favourite Froebel quote, that freedom with guidance, which I think is so appropriate. This does then happen as we go through the progression steps. However, it becomes maybe a little bit more of a STEM sort of project. And this is just a lovely example of how we've used our notice, analyse, respond, how we've used observations, not just indoors, but also outdoors within woodwork as well. What we noticed one little girl doing, how we then analyse that. So what are we going to do? And then how have we responded to it? And this is a nursery child in the summer term. And we've just noted down an observation there and gaining so much from that. But also, what more are we doing for this child now? She's still on a woodwork journey. She's still going. What can we do next for her in terms of our response? And then as we move through the school, then woodwork maybe becomes part more of our projects. So you're encouraging the children to take ownership of their own learning. They may then be making a product, but again, we don't want to see, like I said earlier, 30 bird cages all looking the same, where every child is measuring a piece of wood the same measurement. It's not about that. It's giving them that ownership of a product when we then come into sort of year 1 and above, making cross-curricular links with a purpose. So you can see there that it's gone into a learning journal and there's a purpose behind it. I think this was around Christmas and they were decorating things in year 1. And then they did some mini beasts then in year 1 as a project. So they did a bit more of the subject knowledge part of it beforehand, learning more about the mini beasts and stuff. And then they brought woodwork in then as sort of a mini project within sort of the umbrella of mini beasts, and put woodwork actually into their planning, which was really important. And you can see there they've got like tap, tap, bang, bang, where they've just gone outside and they've explored and they've just having that recap of all the woodwork sort of skills. Then they're designing and then they're making their sculpture. So this is just an example of like their bug hotel that they made. Again, you can see all the end products all look very different. Yes, we are going to have more than one caterpillar, but they don't all look the same. And it's about all of that as well. And then again, it's sort of evidenced in their project books then as well. So whereas maybe we maybe have it as evidence more in our observation books and things in early years, it then may come more into their project books as we go through the school, making sure that there's that link to that purposeful project. And then year 3 then, this is just an example of sort of where they wanted to like enhance their sort of outdoor garden area. So they did a garden sculpture project. This then sort of opens up all the skills of that creative thinking. What do we need? They sort of designed their whole garden as a class together. That revision of the tool safety, so getting everything out, just having a play, just having an explore, working together. Then we did lots of collaborative sculptures because they were much larger in year 3, again with that purpose and authentic meaning behind it. And then that's just one example there, sort of that larger scale product. And then as we move through the year group, so year 3, then we're able to sort of do that reflect and their final touches to their design. So they haven't just designed and made, they're then doing that reflection. They've analysed, maybe is there anything else I can make to do to improve my sculpture further. This is sort of now our newest occupation that we've sort of introduced into St Andrews more this year. We sort of had a little play with it last year, but it has been something that we've been really conscious of sort of embedding this year, is sewing. And again, it gives the children that freedom to choose tools that they're going to use, what materials are they going to use, with guidance from an adult or actually a peer. We've got some year 2 children who are definitely going to be seamstresses when they're older. Absolutely fantastic. Again, all those skills that it just naturally supports. We've sort of got sewing areas or kits particularly from nursery to year 3, where these are just out every single day for children to sort of have that consideration of what tools they may want to use, what resources, just for that sort of everyday sort of continuous sewing experience. And then we've sort of made it develop and progress as we go through the year group. So different sewing skills we'd expect to see in sort of each year group. And again, these are used as part of our play-based experiences or as planned opportunities. So these are just our examples of our little sewing boxes. So nursery to year 3 all have a sewing box, and we've made sure that they're progressive sort of in the expectations, the resources that are in them, and so on. And this is what we'd expect to see in terms of those progressive sewing skills. So in nursery and reception, you are just going to see threading and weaving, whether this is out, with our gross motor skills. We've used fences, we've used bars out in the nursery garden, just for them to feel that threading and weaving sort of experience. We then incorporate, again, the weaving, but with that plastic needle. So again, it may just be like pieces of card with hole punches all the way through and threading through with sort of that smaller instrument. Needle and thread then, we've got year 2 children who are doing that. And then embellishing those designs with loose parts, beads, buttons, more material, and then even further looking at different type of stitches. So I've got a lovely example of year 5. They've just done a sewing project, and they actually practiced all the different types of stitches. So these are just some examples of nursery. So lots of outdoor experiences where it's sort of larger scale and gross motor. However, you're not going to hold all children back. So there is a little girl there in the picture who is sort of already on that smaller scale of threading and weaving. In reception, then we really do focus on that smaller scale and incorporated it into sort of projects where we can. So rather than making a Mother's Day card, they made a someone special picture and embellished it with sewing around, which was literally just hole punched and just threading back and forth however they want to on the displays, and also just that middle picture, that opportunity for threading then within your everyday environment. As you move to year 1, then you've sort of got your sewing station where children could just go and rehearse and practice skills. And then again, embedding it then, your tough tray there, simple threading, and bringing in the loose parts and attachments with buttons and things. And then these are the fabulous year 2 ones that I've seen this year, and they've really embedded it into their project. So they made a blanket for, I think it was a nursing home or something like that. But again, they've got that ongoing everyday sewing experiences within the classroom should the children want to enhance or practice their skills. And again, then the same in year 3. And then we moved to year 5 then, when they've done a really big project on it. I think they were making squishy toys or something, and they've even got the sewing machine out. So you can see how it's developed from nursery right the way up to the top end of progression step 3 there. And then cooking is just something that we have out sort of all day, every day. This is something we embedded within our sort of foundation phase pedagogy a long time ago. So in nursery and reception, we really focus on giving those children the learning opportunity. So that's nursery children there chopping, and we tend to have this sort of on a fortnightly basis that every child will bake or cook something. Within nursery and reception, having then that free flow snack and milk as well for the children every single day. This can be in small groups or independently, and we really make sure that there's recipe cards. So in nursery and reception, this just might be sequencing and following pictures, so to build the children's oracy then of creating that simple recipe. And then as we go towards year 2, then you can see an AMSA snack area there within a year 2 classroom. So they have continuous snack throughout the week. So it might be crackers, that one there is cereal. So again, you can get sort of, you're pouring the milk, measuring the milk, following the simple recipe there of how to make their cereal. They might have jam sandwiches, whatever it may be, to either link to their project or through sort of children's choice. And clay is probably the one that we're probably developing more, working with the expressive arts team as well, and looking at not just the stages of block play and the stages of woodwork, but also those stages of clay and how children are sort of using that. In early years, we find it absolutely amazing for obviously fine motor skills, and it is just about them getting messy. And sometimes staff are like, oh, I don't want to get it out, it's too messy, but it's absolutely fine. And leaving that just as something free flow within your environment. Again, we get lots of observations from this as well, leaving it open-ended so that they can practice their squeezing, their squashing, their twisting, and whatever other sort of ways to support their fine motor skills. And then as we move through, then that top picture there is year 2, sort of embedding then some of those tools and additional objects that they might need. So they were looking at like different patterns on a starfish, and they've brought that then into their clay. When I went in the other day, they were adding buttons and gems, making patterns and things with those as well. And then even moving, one of our year 6 teachers is our expressive arts lead, and she's really keen for clay to look like that in year 5 and year 6 as well, and those opportunities that we can sort of provide. And then this is just one of my favourite quotes from Tina Bruce. She just says, Froebel believed that children learn through first-hand experiences and self-activity. They interact with their environment to develop understanding from their own experiences, and that's where I think it's really important that this is children to have ownership over these Froebel occupations and benefit from interactions with other children and adults who are tuned into their interests and needs. And I just think that sort of rounds up everything that we're trying to reflect with our Froebel occupations in our environment. And there's my details there. If anyone has any further questions or wants to pick my brain about anything, I'm more than happy to receive any emails. I've put my Twitter on there as well, because we put quite a lot of this on our Twitter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice. That's great. It's just great to see what you've captured there and what you're sharing. And also, like, a key point to note there is the progression of it from, it's not just your enabling experiences for your nursery and reception learners. This is what you're providing through to the end of progression steps 3. So it's just fantastic to see. And I know you've got a couple of open events next year. You're running some professional learning in the autumn and the spring. I know for the STEM area that you're looking at the progressive block play, but I know you've got your early years offer as well. So if there is anyone interested, Alice has kindly put her details there, but please do keep an eye out on the professional learning calendar, because it's definitely worth heading to St Andrews to have a look at what they're doing. And I look forward to hearing more about the clay as that develops as well with the expressive arts team. So thank you very much. We're going to move on next now. We're going to welcome Louise and Jess to the call. They're going to talk to you about how they've used their design statement of what matters, the design thinking statement, to lead the science and technology. So welcome, Jess and Louise. I can't see you on my screen just yet, but I will stop talking and hand over to you. So thank you very much.
Hi, hello.
Hi,
yes, I'm Jess. I'm a Year 6 teacher at Eveswell and leading on science and design.
And I'm Louise. I'm Year 3 teacher at Somerton, leading on science, tech and ICT in Somerton. So we have been exploring the design thinking process. This is a process that is used in the real world by businesses. Corporations designing things use this process to help, well, the entire process when they're making things, whether it's a physical thing or like software. This is quite popular in the real world, so we thought we'd have a look at incorporating this into our design process. Shall we go through? So
Yes.
the process has 5 stages. Empathise, define, ideate, prototype and test. Prototype and test, probably words you're familiar with already. Empathise, it usually starts with the empathise phase, which is where you would look at what your problem might be, what you're making, what's the purpose of making it, which is when you go into define. So that looks at the bigger picture of how you're going to make it, what will it look like, and ideate is the idea gathering phase, where you might do your research and you might do measuring to see what you're going to do. So we'll show you today some ideas, but one thing we want to emphasize, I guess, is it's non-linear. So when we started this, we both sometimes got confused with what stage is what, and my partner uses this in his job, so I was constantly going back to him saying, is this define or is this ideate? And actually some of them interlink, some of them are sort of not, it doesn't flow. Like the picture, you can see the arrows keep coming in on that picture, it doesn't flow. So some do interlink, so it can be hard at first. Well, we were trying to do it, I was trying to do it certainly, one to the other, and then I realized that was wrong. So it is very fluid and it doesn't go in a straight line. So you'll see that when we talk about our actual projects, which is the best way to show it really, because it's hard to explain without examples. So Jess is going first with her project in year 6.
So yeah, this is a project. Has it moved across?
Yeah, it's just so.
That I've done with my year 6 class, where we focused on bridges. So when we've been running these projects, what we've always started with is the science. So we were looking at forces, specifically gravity and air resistance. Do you want to do the slides?
Yes, sure.
So we started with all of our science. Oh, hang on. What's that one?
This one.
Yeah. So we did some investigations about different mass of objects and how quickly they fell to Earth, and we did some investigations regarding air resistance. We looked at concept cartoons to show our understanding of gravity, and from that we felt that we could move forward with a design project. As I say, that's the main thing that we've been working on here, is how can we teach our science and how can we follow that up with the design, rather than our design just being something that looks nice and something that focuses on an end user, rather than the children designing something that's just for them to take home. So we followed that up with a bit more science. It's quite complicated explaining to children specifically how bridges work, so we just focused on using compression and tension and demonstrating that, making human models of bridges. And then we moved to the design thinking process. Like Louise said, sometimes it was quite hard to look at each stage and plan what does that look like in this project. So it sort of blurred together, but it was a good way to navigate a project from beginning, starting point, to the end. So we started by looking at the purpose of bridges, different environmental impacts of building bridges. Why do some places not have bridges, like the Amazon? What type of bridges are there in Newport, and what type of bridges might benefit Newport? And then there were some quotes from some of the children, asking like, why are there no bridges on the Amazon, that they cost a lot of money, so that some countries might not be able to afford them and they might not be a priority, and looking at the impact of deforestation. And then they looked at different types of bridges, I think.
It's not going on.
There we go. It's going a bit slow.
It's really slow.
Yeah, we just made a note of that in our books.
Sorry,
That's okay.
Computer's a bit slow.
And then we sort of looked at what the problem was that we were trying to overcome. So the problem. So in this case, we sort of had a problem that we needed to design a new bridge for Newport. So what's in the next bit? I'm trying to think what comes next. We started looking at different materials of bridges. So bringing science in again. What materials do we use to make bridges? Why are some more suitable than others? How has that changed over time? So we looked at some old-fashioned bridges being made from stone, but newer bridges are made from different materials. We looked at the fact rubber is a poor material of bridges, for example, when you're driving on them. So they made that link between sort of tyres and rubber. And then again, we documented that in our book and looked at different types of bridges in terms of like suspension bridges, truss bridges. I can't remember the names of the other ones. Then we did a survey. We looked at some bridges around the world, and we looked at what designs we preferred the most and why, that we could use them when it came to designing our own bridges, that we would have some sort of feedback on which ones were the most sort of aesthetically pleasing. So those are the words that one of the words that we taught the children was aesthetically pleasing, and they use it for everything now.
Yeah.
Then we came up with some mood boards. So we used Jamboard on Google to create a mood board of all different designs. So they had one slide where they specifically looked at Newport and one slide where they looked at bridges around the world. And then they had to analyze that using post-it notes. So that was just sort of ideating, generating ideas for design. I think there's quite a few slides of this. Yeah.
See some ideas.
Then it came to us having a go at prototyping, and we wanted to ensure that we tried experiment with different mediums to create designs. It wasn't just on paper. We tried different things out. So the first thing we did was chocolate welding bridges. So they had a single chocolate bar, tested it with weight, then they doubled it, tested that with weight, then they made like a box girder bridge and tested that just to look at different strengths of the same material. Then we used Tinkercad. We set all the children up on Tinkercad, and they had a go at designing bridges on here. And this was the first time that they'd ever used Tinkercad. And to be fair, they were pretty good at picking it up and then creating some pretty good bridge designs. Then we let them have a little explore with the Lego. So that was their third design. Then they sketched a design out that they might want to build. And then it came to sort of having a go at coming up with a final design and testing it. So we decided to use art straws. So then they drew one more design that was a drawing of art straws with accurate measurements on it and things. So for example, if it was going to be 10 centimeters long, they drew that on their sketch. And then they had a go at building and testing with different weights. So that was quite interesting to see the different designs come together. And then we had that in our book. So you can see there the design there, the different triangles, the measurements on it, and the evaluation. Then we did some peer assessment where they emailed me their thoughts. So we had a sort of gallery. They walked around, had a look at different ones, and then had to email me feedback of different designs. And that's it really, in a very short, quick spell of how I implemented the design thinking process. And that was my first project, and that was quite tricky. But then when it came to my second project, it was a lot easier to follow those steps. I think once you've got it broken down into steps, it's a lot easier to plan for your design projects. So then since then, I've done another one where our science was, we were looking at mixing and separating materials. So we had to have a mixture, and the children suggested methods of inquiry to separate them. And then the design thinking project was looking at water, so looking at problems with water around the world. And their final design was a product that would help clean pollution from the oceans. That obviously didn't have a final design like the bridges, because we couldn't implement some of the very creative and inventive designs that they came up with, but we entered them into a competition, which was quite nice for the children to see that their designs might still have a lasting sort of impression on someone. And our year 5 have picked up the design thinking process as well. So they were looking at magnetism in science, and they've since done a design thinking project, again following those steps, designing a game for younger learners to improve fine motor skills. So they had like card, lollipop sticks, magnets, and it was a sort of like a maze type games. So yeah, it's been really useful, and I know Louise is going to talk to you about her project.
Okay, so mine was year 3, and it was based around our topic Cynefin, which is a place where we belong. And we looked a little bit at our local area and people who help us. And nearby, next door to Easwell, is a dentist. So we were looking at teeth, and the human body and how dentists are important, how to care for your teeth. So our science before starting design thinking was all about teeth, the different types of teeth. We did the eggshell investigation on different drinks, looking at diet. They used salt dough to make a model of the teeth, as you can see in the middle picture there. And they basically understood they need to brush their teeth. It's really important, and what foods to avoid. So that was embedded. That was the main focus of our science for our project. So when it came to the empathise stage, it's not showing the whole thing. The problem, we identified that actually 1/3 of children start school without with tooth decay. So 1/3 of children in Wales start school with tooth decay. So that was our problem, which is huge. So we came to then thinking about how can we sort this out. So our empathise now is looking at the problem. So they created Google Forms to find out about the children's dental care routine at home. So looking at what foods do they eat, what drinks do they drink, how often do you brush your teeth, how long do you brush your teeth for. So they used Google Forms to create that, and then we sent some forms out to the rest of the school to be surveyed, and we did find out actually that a lot of children, especially younger children, don't brush their teeth twice a day. They drink a lot of fizzy drinks, they're eating a lot of sweets, they're not eating their 5-a-day fruit and veg, things like that. So we had to come up with ways to solve this problem and to support and promote caring for teeth especially in younger children. So we targeted younger classes. So from there then, our vision is to help younger children improve their dental hygiene. So every design thinking project should have a vision from your problem, what you're going to do. And then the define phase is where you basically talk about how you're going to do that vision, how you're going to achieve it. So my class came up with loads of ideas. We put some big sheets of paper down, they carouseled what we could do, and their ideas were electric toothbrush, promote electric toothbrushing for younger children, making some toothbrushes. I think it was listening to songs and watching videos while they brush their teeth, so they do it for 2 minutes. There was making sure the toothbrushes were colourful and appealing for them, and toothbrushes that flash or buzz when it's time to stop or change direction in your mouth. So they used their own experiences from home and also came up with all these ideas. So they decided then that they were going to design a toothbrush for younger children. So that was our main focus, our outcome for the project. Not a making one, we couldn't make one, but this shows the stages without that. So they also created flow charts to show how to brush your teeth step by step, and literacy links with this, healthy leaflets, how to care for your teeth, to inform younger children. You know, so the language was aimed at younger children with images and diagrams, what to eat, what to avoid, how and why to care for your teeth. And then our research comes in, our define. Okay, so we gave the children lots of different toothbrushes that were all aimed for children, and they basically did a pictograph, which ones they liked the best, why, and voted on that. Gave it reasons. My class actually went for a more boring, whiter toothbrush because it reminds them of their parents and wanted to be grown up. But when we surveyed younger children, that was the opposite. So they came up with reasons why they liked each toothbrush and why it was important. And they even went online and researched different toothbrushes for sale and made a mood board of that, which we show on the link. And then we had to look at what makes a good toothbrush. So they came up from their research, they came up with what would be good. Brightly coloured, cartoons on it, electric. They all voted electric was the best. Buzzers, all those things we've mentioned already. What makes a good toothbrush? So from there, we had to obviously talk to those younger children, and they were our audience. So it's the children came up with tables, used their Welsh, Parlu Oitin Hoffi, or Oitin Hoffi Pink, Oitin Hoffi Coch, and did surveys in each class to find out the most popular colours, and then they presented this in a bar graph. So there's lots of maps involved here, and this informed their decisions. So black and white were the least popular colours, so nobody designed black and white toothbrushes. So they used all this information to help them, and they also analysed their graphs there once they'd done that. So this helped them decide what they were going to do, and We also asked favourite characters, which is presented here in a cloud, word cloud. So they knew which characters to target and what to design on the toothbrushes. And also as part of Define, we looked and measured the children's toothbrushes to see how big they needed to be. So they estimated first how big they thought it was, then did their measurements, so that they knew when they designed it what measurement it should be, not too big, so it's, you know, it needs to be easy for them to actually do. And then they came up with actually doing circuits. That wasn't initially part of the planning process, but they said electric toothbrushes, they use a motor, they buzz or they flash. We didn't have any motors in school, so we looked at the buzzing and flashing route and did simple circuits using bulbs and buzzers to put inside basically our toothbrushes, and they had to choose if they prefer it to buzz or prefer it to flash, and they looked at how electricity works. So more science came in there spontaneously, really, as part of a project developing. And then they came up with 2 designs, and they included, it's hard to see in the picture, but they included their measurements and a tally box at the bottom. So once they'd done their 2 designs, they went back to those younger classes and asked the children, which one do you prefer, and put tallies in the box for each picture. Do you prefer this one? Do you prefer that one? There's also I don't think you can see the electric circuits they've drawn on there, if it's a buzzer or a bulb, and what materials. We looked at materials suitable for toothbrushes. They've chosen, we looked at toothbrushes being made of bamboo, plastic, and wood, and they've mostly come up with bamboo because it's better for the environment. But yeah, some of them said plastic because that's what a lot of them are made out of. So they voted on, the younger children voted on their favourite of the 2 designs, which then became their final design. There's one final design then would be the last one. And that was then, when they actually evaluated their project, they went back to the infants and asked them, would you buy this toothbrush? Why would you buy it? What do you like about it? And they got that feedback then from their final project. So we called it prototyping, sort of, but they weren't making anything. There's nothing to test. It's more, this project was more about looking at the other children. So from their first designs, they went back and, you know, talked to the younger ones, and that sometimes changed their final design. But then along with that, because they'd said initially a video or a song for 2 minutes, we actually went on to Scratch, and the children created really simple 2-minute programs where their sprite had to change direction every 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds change direction of brushing teeth. So the sprite had to change every 30 seconds for 2 minutes. So we had a little look at coding as well within the project for that one. So yeah, I mean, the impact of that, the children loved it. Even now we're doing our reports and they're writing about what their favourite thing of the year was. A lot of them saying, oh, we love doing the toothbrush work.
Yeah, I've had the same in my class, that when they're looking back at sort of highlights of the year, they've said the Bridges project, because it is a full project with so many skills involved. They've really, it's been a memorable experience for them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cross-curricular. We had the maths, the literacy, lots of different things in that. And the staff who, we've passed this on now, my year 1 teacher's trialling design thinking at the moment, and she's linking it to the Olympics. She's, they're linking it to cycling and wearing helmets to try and promote older children to wear helmets, so using watermelons to test, you know, safety of helmets and design features, and then lots of similar things. I talking to older children, what would you like, why would you wear it, etc. So she's in the middle of that one now, because we're doing a whole school Olympic project. But my second design thinking project was linked to the Romans, so it was more humanities heavy. So we had to learn about the Romans first. They went to Cullinan Museum and they basically did a Roman boot camp, became Roman soldiers, and then the problem was that the Celts were coming to attack Isca Fortress and they needed to defend it. So came about building catapults, and we prototyped with art straws and then wooden lolly sticks and straws, and then designed a woodwork, basically did a woodwork project with design thinking with testing as well. So Jess taught me all about woodworking, and basically then we linked the design thinking to that, and had, this time for that project we did have a final product to test and evaluate and go back and change things if we needed to. So yeah, there's, the stages do interlink a little bit, but that I think is basically that. Is that it in a nutshell?
Oh yeah, that's just, this is quite new to us here, and this, only some teachers doing it. So our next steps is sort of rolling out across the whole school and looking for progression in design thinking. So looking at what design thinking looks like in year 1 in comparison to what it looks like in year 6, because like I said, we're still in the quite early stages. Yeah. But it is, I think the most important thing is it's just an easy process to follow to get a really good design project linked to your science. I think that's the thing that I've taken away from it the most.
And it is forcing us to look at our DT and not just go, right, plan, make, evaluate. We're actually going back and making changes. The prototyping stage was really important. I think that's often missed out in schools, isn't it? So it is making us think about it as a whole project, not just, you know, an end product take home. Like
and
the
why are we doing this project? Not just so that we've got something that looks nice. It's, you know, what is the purpose of it? So yeah,
I think, thank you both. Really interesting, really great to see the work. And I think some of the key takeaways for me throughout the years you've been working on this has been the engagement from the children, how, you know, because the authenticity that sits behind it and them going through the process, you know, the level, the quality of work you've been able to get from this in terms of the science is they're enthusiastic about it, they're wanting to learn about it, which has just given them that hook to go further. But like looking at that design process as well, the design process you're using is based on Intel. Some of the work around Intel have done, looking at future employability and, you know, what do we want our learners to be able to do? And thinking of that empathise stage, that's something children find really hard, isn't it? You know, to look at what other children want. So going into detail, getting your numeracy through with the data, gathering data, and really spending the time over that has had such an impact on where, you know, where you are with that process as well. So thank you for sharing that. And I look forward to seeing how the progression of that design thinking looks throughout the school as more and more teachers engage with it, and to see the impact of it. And also, I know you're working as a cluster moving forward now, looking at your progression maps collectively. So it may be that some of the terminology of this process, you know, might change slightly to fit with the cluster, but ideally it would still follow the process of that empathise, prototype, and going through it. So thank you very much. I'll just open the floor now for any questions. Is there anyone who'd like to ask anything? No, that's great. I think Louise and Jess are staying on anyway, so if you do have any questions or wanted to ask a little bit more about some of the things, please do pop it in the chat or stop me at any point, and we can ask the questions while the ladies are still with us on the call. But thank you very much. I'm going to look at next. Rich was meant to join us from Blackwood today. Unfortunately, he's been unable to attend, but he has done a recording. There's few of you on the call that may be involved in this. We've been looking at progression in computer science this year, looking at different equipment, and over the next couple of weeks, Sean and I are pulling that together so it will be available for you again on the Supporting Our Schools website. And we've looked at a range of equipment, so Spheros Indies we're going to look at in a bit of detail now, but there will be the progression maps that sit there that you can use, take back to school and have a look at some of the kit you're using and what you want it to achieve. So I'm just going to play this, it's a 10-minute clip now from Richard, just looking at the progression of using Sphero Indies in primary school.
Hi, my name is Richard Turner. I'm Year 5 teacher and SciTech lead at Blackwood Primary School. So the focus obviously for today is the developing the progression in computer science. After undertaking the AS course Managing Digital Effectively, it forced me to critically evaluate on the provision that we had within our school. In terms of digital infrastructure, we're fortunate to have a 1:2 or 1:3 ratio for Chromebooks and iPads. We've got a range of resources that can be used for computational thinking, ranging from Bluebots, Dashbots, Microbits, Spheros. However, it was obvious from mapping the devices and resources and learning works that both pedagogy and progression could be improved, particularly in early years. So right at the start, I decided to kick off with a clarified canvas, just to focus on what impact I wanted to have, what problems we were trying to solve, what we could change to result in improvements, and how I would judge whether or not we've been successful. Okay, so from the funding that we were provided as part of the project, we were given the Sphero Indie bots. Unfortunately, I can't be with you today to show them to you in person, but I'm going to play a short little video just to give you a rundown exactly of what they are.
This is Indy. Indy is a color sensing robot specifically designed to make problem solving fun for the younger students. Out of the box, Indy has been programmed to respond to different colors in a way that kids are sure to love. Indy encourages creative expression and builds confidence, inspires open-ended, imaginative, play-based learning with real-life scenarios, and nurtures kids' natural instinct to explore and create, all while introducing computational thinking and programming fundamentals without the need for a device. But when your kids are ready to take the next step on their computer science and problem-solving journey, there's the Sphero EDU Junior app built specifically for Indy that allows kids to learn the very basics of block coding by reconfiguring how Indy responds and sees different colors. Everything from lights, sounds, and Indy's movements are all customizable. You can even program Indy to make music. Open a whole world of programming possibilities to learners as early as pre-K, teaching them critical thinking, problem solving, all while having fun.
Okay, so as you can see, Sphero Indy is an awesome little robot. It's a very robust entry-level robot to introduce children to the basics of programming. It's got a color sensor on the bottom that recognizes different color tiles. Each tile instructs Indy to move in a different way. So for example, red is stop, light green is go, blue is a 90-degree right turn, pink is a 90-degree left turn. You kind of get the gist of where things are going. Battery life is really good. For a normal day's use is about 6 to 7 hours. It can be charged via a USB port, or for the class pack, it does come with a dock. It's totally screenless coding, or you can progress onwards to link the Sphero Indy by Bluetooth to the Sphero Junior app, so you can use block coding. It's very simple, but it is so engaging for the children to learn the basics of coding, problem solving, and to develop computational thinking. Okay, so in Blackwood Primary, independent learning is a key component in our Inspire curriculum, and also when we were looking at progression, we needed to build in the device we had into our current way of working. So across the school at any one time, you could find a year group cohort broken down into 3 family groups. One group will be developing LLC and math skills. One group will be applying literacy, numeracy, or digital skills across the curriculum. And then there'll be a third group undertaking a rich array of independent tasks, a part of our Inspire curriculum. So from woodworking, cooking, sewing, investigations, and technology, to mention a few. So as a school, we've carried out a lot of action research and professional development to foster this over the last 5 years. But we thought, obviously, how could we support the use of Indy in our independent technology areas? So some of the pedagogical principles that we looked at as follows. So obviously, for effective teaching and learning of programming to take place in children, you need to give them the right level of detail, which must be given when they're ready for it, but also prompts them to think about what the code is doing. So it's that kind of the just right approach. So we tried to incorporate a range of strategies to foster this independently. So obviously the first one to bear in mind was cognitive load. So the limitations on working memory, overload causes quality output to decline. So when carrying out independent tasks, children require a good degree of skills and knowledge. So we're mindful when creating resources, we needed to scaffold them effectively. And then parsing problems, which fit really well to the use of the Indy robot. So we provide children with the blocks of code, or in this instance, the tiles that are needed to create a program, but we jumble them up. It fosters problem solving, computational thinking, and the understanding of the key components. And then the final one, which we use in our independent areas via QR code, is stepwise self-explanation. So this combines instructional videos with questions, prompting children to reflect on their learning. And it's been shown to help with, particularly with programming. So as you can see, we've got a straightforward QR code. The children are all trained to scan it, gives them a step-by-step video. After watching the video, the children answer questions about its purpose and the functionality. Okay, so what does good look like in PS1? So for our progression map. So children can identify, create, and follow sequences in patterns. Children can recognize and follow instructions in the appropriate order to perform a task. Children can organize, select, and use simple language to give instructions to others. Children can control the indie by giving instructions using the colored tiles. And children can identify errors in simple sets of instructions and sequences. Okay, so the resources. So the resources primarily were aimed at early years. As you can see, they start off, they're progressive. They start off very simply with an action matching activity, whereby the children just explore indie. They get Tinker Time, which is obviously important for staff and for children, where they just get a chance to play and see what it does. And all they do is literally match the color tiles with the corresponding instructions. So for example, red would be stop, the turtle would be slow, then we've got the spiral, which is celebrate, and the rest is self-explanatory. And then we move on to awesome algorithms. So the Sphero Indie comes with 15 puzzle cards in the pack, ready for children to explore. Where children, simply as you can see in the bottom resource, children work out what the missing instruction is as part of the sequence. And then this builds and builds and becomes more difficult. Then we move on to perfect patterns, where children work out repeating patterns and what will come next. And then this obviously works down into, if you can see perfect patterns down in the bottom right-hand corner, children work out four-sided path. What do they need to complete it? So there's computational thinking in there as well. And then obviously you can see where the extension, it develops with a figure of 8 as children's knowledge grows. Okay, and then we move on to the use of the Sphero Junior app. So the children create their own maze using blocks, books, pencils, tape, whatever they can find in class. They get a bit of time to connect the robot via Bluetooth to the app. And then they simply use, it's kind of like a joystick on the screen. They use the joystick to control Indy and move him through the maze. And then you introduce a bit of competition where we have different jobs. So for example, there's an organizer who helps decide the roles. We've got a technician who's going to time people to see how fast they can do it. So we've got a bit of data handling in there as well, of recording times, and a programmer who races Indy through the maze. So they rotate as they go. So you can see then in PS1, there's a clear progression from tinkering with the robot to eventually moving on to using the Edu Junior app. Okay, what impact have we seen? So the first thing, Tinker Time has been invaluable for both staff and children. In terms of pedagogy, if staff are not sure what Sphero Indie can do, how can they plan an activity based on it? And the same for children. Before we can start teach them and introduce things, they need that play time, the tinker time, to be able to figure out what it actually does. That's part of the fun of it. Secondly, we've got a clear picture on what progression looks like at Blackwood Primary and how to support it with a relevant pedagogy. It fosters an ability to think critically and solve problems in early years. It builds our resilient attitude, the perseverance and determination. We've seen increased levels of motivation. There's the element of, with technology, particularly in early years, PS2, of gamification. And also it's that boost of confidence. It develops independent learners. So that's our project at Blackwood Primary. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so I'm going to pop a link in the chat now for you. It is the Big Book of Computing Pedagogy. It is free. It's free to download. It's a really useful PDF, but you'll hear Richard mentioned Parsons' Problem and a few other strands early on when he was talking about what they've done to look at the progression of the Sphero Indies in school. If you are looking at the computer science element as well, there's definitely a book worth downloading and having a look at it. I'm not suggesting you read it all in one evening. It is in snippets. It's quite easy reading. You can choose the different sections to look at over time. But keep your eyes peeled. We'll have some further progression maps come in now for different tools that sit within the computer science strand of the AOLE. I just wanted to finish this session this afternoon with talking about what our regional offer looks like for next year and what our science and technology offer does look like. So that's there for you there. We've got the teaching. You'll notice we're going back to the basics approach. So we're going back to teaching D&T, teaching science. What does this look like in school? So the teaching science is going to be based on, if you haven't seen it, back earlier this year, the Education Endowment Foundation released 6 points to effective teaching how to teach science effectively. So we're going to be basing the professional learning around that research there, which is looking at authentic learning. It's looking at developing vocabulary and language in science and looking at assessment to support that teaching of science. So that teaching science year 1 to year 6 will be based purely on that. Around the research around it and giving you strategies and resources to help develop that in the school. We've got electricity and materials then looking at progression through practical activities. ESOL and the summer term will be offering using the big questions to develop links across the science and technology AOLE. So coming back to that design thinking element and using that to develop it. And then quite successfully this year, we run the engaging investigations in the primary classroom. So we're refining those this year now to look at those for progression step 2 and progression step 3. And then we've got developing literacy and primary STEM options using the Voice 21 strategies. So if you are a Voice 21 school or you'd like to develop Voice 21 further, we will be looking at how we can use those roles and use that cards to develop that in your science, technology and maths areas there. And then St Andrews are offering the progression in block play, as well as it's worth looking at their early years offer as well to see the Froebelian occupations in action in the foundation phase, progression step 1 and early years. And then we've got the scientific inquiry, and that's going to be available as an asynchronous professional learning session, so you can dip in and out with a range of resources to support bringing back all the types of inquiry really around the science. You should be able to click on the screen now to take you to the progression map. So there are progression maps. They've been created nationally by the Cross Consortia working group. So you have got progression maps for, well, you've got here spreadsheets, website design, you've got them for iPads, what they're called, podcasts. And different strands presentations. You've got progression maps there. Please do share this link with colleagues throughout the school. It's a really useful resource. What does good look like and how can we enable progression across the school? The progression maps that we're talking about with the computer science with Sphero Indies and the different tools are also going to sit in this format, as well as some of the work we've done this year with design technology. You'll notice that we've got Pete Morehouse coming in to do some work on woodwork. So he'll be running the 2-day session on introducing and developing woodwork in your school. So keep an eye out for the professional learning offer, which will be out before the end of term, to book your places onto those if that's the way you're going to go. We will have progression maps for the design and technology areas as well. So for those, for the cookery, for the woodwork, they will follow the similar format to how these look on the screen now, if you've managed to open that link up. I just wanted to bring your attention to the DigiFest Hub event. It's happening on the 2nd of September, I believe, but we're looking at innovation, knowledge sharing and digital learning and teaching. So it's a full day. If you sign up the link on the screen there, even if you're unable to attend, they will send you the recordings. So I know there's a session on artificial intelligence. You'll be looking at Adobe, Apple, Common Sense Education, Flip, Google, Microsoft Minecraft. You can see there's the full array of experiences as part of that day, but I do recommend that you sign up and register, because if you're unable to attend in person, the recordings will be quite useful to access following the session. You've also got here then the link to the Hub digital community. So for those of you who are overseeing the digital and DCF element as well, there's if you sign up and to join this community there, you'll have the most up-to-date information about events, how to make the most out of the Hub tools that we've got freely available to us, and that impact on classroom practice, how to have that positive impact. So again, just another link there that I'd recommend signing up to, just so you're getting the most up-to-date information straight from the Hub team. We've also got here, for those of you that are using Adobe, and we do have the licenses now for Adobe, so you've got, I just wanted to share with you then that you've got the YouTube playlists or short lessons on popular themes. So, you know, you've got the Olympics, pollination, sustainability, food chains, or mini beasts and at the beach, but lesson packs for those that may be new to Adobe and familiar with it. You have got some resources there that will help support your professional learning in developing the use of Adobe across the primary school. And just an event to put in to draw your attention to, as now we're closing on the end of the year. I think 2025 we think is a lifetime away, but we'll be sat here soon talking about it. And the theme for British Science Week next year is Change and Adapt. The Kickstart grants will open in September. So the link there will take you directly to the page, but they do offer funding, which is always useful. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that. So you've got it in your diaries for September to have a look and get your application in to access some money to support with the Change and Adapt. And quite a broad theme as well, with it being Change and Adapt, with, you know, some of the ideas coming through already, looking at technology and how that's advancing and adapting. Artificial intelligence would be a fantastic one to look at there. But then you can go back to your the biology strand as well, and looking at adaptation of animals. So we've got something I'm asked about regularly is for a calendar of events. So you've got the STEM Buddies website there that has got, for this year, they've got all the events mapped out. But if you were looking at your science curriculum and where the key events are throughout the year, head over to that website. And then we've got the Sea Science website, which is where you can access your STEM ambassadors. It will take you to your STEM ambassadors that are freely available to come into schools, and also the grants. And Kerry-Ann Angharad, who sits behind the Sea Science website, does update that regularly. So you've got information about the most up-to-date and open grant applications and windows there. For the Newport and Torrevine schools on the call, don't forget about your Adina Trust. It's a non-competitive grant, so if you are Newport or Torrevine, you will get £700 a year for 3 years. I believe it was last year, so it will run for 3 years. So from September, you'll be able to apply for £700 again, and then £500 for your early years to sit in there. Okay, so again, the link is there on the screen for you to submit your application. I just wanted to end the session really with sharing my contact details should you wish to make contact for any professional learning needs or any support or cluster work you're looking at doing next year. Please do get in touch. But I'd also like to extend my thanks to our partner schools for the year. A number of them are on the call today, so thank you very much for the hard work throughout the year. This job would be impossible without the partner schools sharing practice and working alongside us. So thank you very much. And also thank you to each of our presenters for joining us this afternoon. It's always great to hear from schools, in-person examples and sharing examples of people's work. So thank you very much. I will stop the recording now. So if you would like to ask any questions before you leave, please do. Please feel free to